Hi, in this video we are diving into how to configure a development build for a project using EAS Build. Let's get started. Let's start by learning about what are development builds and why we need them. A development build is a debug version of your project and it's optimized for quick iterations when creating an application. It contains the expo-dev-client library, which offers a robust and complete development environment. This setup allows you to integrate any library or change code inside the native directories as required. If you want to learn more about the difference between Expo Go and a development build, I will leave a link in the description for another video that will clarify any questions that you have. We have this great document in the Expo documentation that we're going to be referencing that is going to guide us in how to set up the development build. So the first thing that we need to do is to install the Expo Development Client library. So here I have this project, super simple, that I created that allows you to split a bill. For example, let's say $100 between two people and plus 15% of tip. You can see the total that each person has to pay. So this is a very simple application, and then you can save records. But now let's say that we need to integrate a library that requires native code, and we need to use now a development build. So as you can see here, I'm using Expo Go. The first thing that we need to do to start using a development build, it's going to be installing the expo-dev-client. So let's go ahead and run this command, npx expo install expo-dev-client, and this is going to install this, and you can verify this in the package JSON. So I'm using this version in here. And once we have that, we can build this application. So if I now say npx expo start, you're going to see that it's going to start by default using the development build server. Now, if I try to run this on my iOS simulator, this is going to fail. The reason for that is because we don't have a build that we can use to install in this iOS simulator. So let's create a build using EAS. So for that, we need to first configure EAS. So the first thing that you need to do is install the EAS CLI. So I'm going to say npm install globally EAS CLI. So this is going to install the EAS CLI in your computer. And after I run this command, I should be able to say EAS-V to get the version that I'm using. In this case, I'm using 14.3.1. Cool. So now that we have the Expo CLI, we can log in into our Expo account. So if you haven't already, just go ahead and create an account at expo.dev. And then once you have your credentials, you can sign in using the CLI. So I'm going to say EAS login. And as you can see, I have a warning that is telling me you are already logged in as Beto at Expo. So in this case, I already have my credentials in here, so I'm going to cancel this process. But if you are not sure, you can also run the command EAS who am I, and then hit enter. And this is going to give you information about your user. So in this case, I'm using this account. And even if you have more accounts, you should be able to see them in here. If you want to learn more about EAS CLI, you can simply say EAS-H. And this is going to give you all the commands that you can use with EAS, as well as a nice description. Here we have actually the command that we are going to use next, which is the init command. And this is going to create and link our EAS project. So let's go ahead and run. Let me clear, and I'll say EAS init and hit enter. So this is going to ask me which account should own this project. So in this case, I'm going to say Beto at Expo. And then would you like to create a project for Split EAS, which is my application? And I'll say yes. So what this is doing is creating a project on expo.dev. And from here, we can actually go to the dashboard by clicking this link. So I'll do that and open this link. So this is the place where you will find your builds, your updates, and all the information about your project. Let's go back to the code, and I want to show you what has happened in this project. So as you notice, the app.json was modified. And if I scroll down, you're going to see that we have now these values. And these values are being added by default when we run this command by EAS. And basically it's just adding this project ID, which is going to serve as an identifier for this specific project. And also the owner, which is my account. Okay, so we have successfully initialized our EAS project. And now we need to configure one of the services that we're going to be using. because we can use many services with EAS. In this case, we want to use EAS Build. So let's run this command and run configure. Let's hit enter. This is going to configure my project and it's going to ask me which platform do you want to configure. So in this case, I want this application to run on Android and iOS. So I'll say all. And what this is doing is creating this EAS JSON on the left, as you can see here. This EAS JSON is going to contain the configuration for build and as well other services of EAS, for example, submit. And as you can see for development, we have this profiled. So development client equal to true basically is telling EAS that we want to build this application so that we can use a development build on my real device and then still be able to connect to the Metro server of my project and get updates as I develop my application. This is useful so that we can develop faster and test on a real device using a development build. If you don't want to depend on the local server of your project, you can simply use a preview or a production build to test. These two are going to be for apps that we want to submit to the app stores for internal testing or just for production releases. But in this case, we're using a development profile, which is specifying that we want to use the development client, which is going to use the expo-dev-client library that we installed earlier to load the build into the iOS simulator or into your real device. And from there, load all the code that we are developing. That is going to allow you to develop faster because you can test quickly. Even if you're using native code, you can test quickly on your simulator or real device. Then the distribution is internal. This means that we don't want to send this application to the app stores. We just want to be able to access this app within our team. Same for preview. And as you notice in production, we are not specifying the distribution internal because these profiles are going to be used when we submit to these stores. That's it for this quick chapter. Just to recap, we learned how to install the EAS CLI, initialize a new EAS project, and configure our project to use EAS Build. I hope you liked this quick chapter. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.